What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. Today, I want to talk about a big problem for CEOs and everyone out there in the sales world, really. Sales is kind of broken. I'm hearing all the time that things are really not working very well. So I want to take some time today to kind of talk about the state of sales, the state of selling, what is going on out there. You're probably reading a lot of things on LinkedIn like I am about, the buyer behavior has changed. Sellers are under quota. Do SDRs still work or not work? Should we hire them or not? What's going on? There's just so many things. So the state of selling, I think it's in a bit of an upheaval and we really need to talk about it. So the first thing I want to say is, as a CEO, this is really your domain. You have got to fix this at your company. You may have a CRO and they should be helping you and they should be, this taking care of the strategy and the execution. You may not. You may be leading sales. You may still be doing founder-led sales. And then you're really going to have to take control of it. Yes, your sales leaders can help you and others in your organization, but you've got to rethink all of this. And I think the crux of it is to think of it this way. We have to stop selling and start helping. And that's really probably the most important message here. Stop selling and start helping. And the pressure that we put on salespeople to sell the thing that we sell versus to find a great fit and close deals with companies who can be wildly successful using what you've sold them, right? That shift has to happen. We just can't be selling stuff to people because that's what we sell. We have to start helping them hit their goals. That means there has to be a really good fit and they have to be able to use what we sold them successfully. So if we rethink selling, we've got a lot of different things to think about. Number one, who are we hiring to sell? Right? So we have young people that we're hiring who come right out of school or maybe have had, one or two jobs max. They've been in the workforce a couple of years. And typically we're putting them on the phone to dial for dollars as SDRs or sales development reps, or sometimes we call them BDRs. But these people are ill-equipped to do this job. We give them a little bit of a training, but they're failing miserably at it and the turnover is high. So what's going on there, right? I just starting with that, maybe that's not a role anymore because that role isn't working very well. I know some companies are still having success with it, but most are not. So rethinking that, rethinking when we hire a salesperson, who are the people that they're selling to? What kind of person with what knowledge and what skills do those prospects out there need? So whatever industry you're selling into, whatever title you're selling into, whatever situations you're selling into, hire people who will be a great fit for that. Because your customers need someone that they can relate to, that can relate to them, that have a certain body of knowledge and understanding and the skills that are needed, right? So we really need to rethink, who are we hiring? Is this a person that can be successful communicating with the people who we want to buy from us? And typically I'm seeing, no, we have not hired people who can communicate well with the people that we want to buy from us. They usually have completely no understanding of who they're selling to or what's on their mind or what's important, but we'll get to that in a minute. So please think about who you're hiring to sell to the audience that is your target audience, the people most likely to buy from you. These are these precious prospects that you want to bring into your world and understand and get some of them to buy from you. So really think hard about who you're going to put in front of them. Now, that said, it takes a team today to sell, especially in the complex sale, the world in which I live, where we're selling complicated things that cost a lot of money, and they're going to be, a lot of steps to get them sold, a lot of people involved in the decision, a lot of dollars, and a lot of technical complexities on the other end, right? And, it's not always that technical, but there are things to do once we sell it and onboard and then get engagement and user adoption, right? So think about that. That's, from hello to I'm your loyal customer, right? Who are we hiring to put in the path of these people who can buy from us? And how do we help them buy, right? We want frictionless buying. And so we really need to think about, are these people capable of frictionless buying? Are they on a team that can really help the buyer buy? So think about who are you hiring? And then the next thing, and maybe it's actually the first thing, is, are they set up for success? So I hear so many CEOs telling me, we need to hire salespeople, and we want them to get on the phone and call outbound and find us some new clients. Okay, well, that's great. There are salespeople who can do that. But what have you done to make that possible? So do you have great marketing? Do you have a brand that people know? Are you on social media? Are you, sharing great content? Like, what are you doing so that when they pick up the phone, they have a chance, right? It can't be never heard of you, never heard of what you sell, don't need it. They've got to have a chance. So you're saying, yeah, pick up the phone and call people. That's great. Are those people going to know who you are? Are they going to understand what category you exist in? Are they going to have something to compare it to? Is it clear what you solve for? So you've got to set them up for success. And if you don't have any marketing, if you don't have anything happening that's going to help these salespeople be known when they show up, that's going to be really tough, right? It makes that job harder. So think about that. And then also setting them up for success means that you have highly targeted your ideal customer, highly targeted. Now, I go into companies all the time and I just see, oh yeah, this is who we sell to. Way too broad, right? We need to narrow so that we can speak directly to those people in those companies, in those industries, and they see that the message is for them. So if you have not highly targeted, you are not setting salespeople up for success. Then there's the tools, right? Do you have the right tools for them to use? Can they get the information that they need easily? Are you training them on these tools, right? So all of this has to be considered. We have to set these people up for success. They step into this new role. Are they going to be able to be successful? Now, salespeople out there should be asking you questions to make sure they can be successful in their role. But I know many of them are not. And I've just seen it so many times where we hire salespeople and we give them some onboarding and training and they cannot do the job. So one, we might have selected the wrong type of person for the audience that we have. And two, we probably didn't set them up for success. So those are two things that you need to be like keenly aware of. All right. So let's say you do hire the right type of person, right? And that is, your understanding and really like writing that out and knowing what you're looking for. But then you also have to pay commiserately with that. So a lot of the CEOs I talk to, they just don't want to pay a lot for salespeople. Well, then you're going to get somebody young and inexperienced without a lot of skills. If that's okay, then fine, go ahead. But in the end, you won't win with that if what you need is someone more experienced who has knowledge, business acumen, understands the industry and the people that they're calling. If you need that, you have to pay for it. So you can't really cheap out on salespeople. So you really have to think about who is the best type of person, for the audience that you have, and what skills, what knowledge, what abilities do they need? And you have to pay for that because it's hard to bring people up to that quickly. It takes time, and that time can cost you a lot of money. So that's another piece that you want to look at. All right. Now, let's say you hired the right type of person and you've got the pay commensurate with that, and you have set them up for success by highly targeting your audience and by having the right marketing, having your brand out there, having great content out there, lots of tools to draw people to you. You as CEO are out there evangelizing. All these things are in place so they can be successful. Then what has to happen is amazing onboarding, right? So it's not plug and play. You don't hire a salesperson. They were at another company. They just step into your role and they can do it. It just doesn't happen like that. They need the onboarding, right? So the onboarding is learning about your company and your industry and your product and how they navigate within your company, right? Learning the tools that you've provided them and how to use them proficiently, not just use them proficiently, which is so rare. I rarely see a salesperson that can use all their tools proficiently, right? We're going to talk about that in a minute too. So onboard them well, right? Now, that's just the beginning. It just gets them started. There's some training and learning and talking and discussions and all of that kind of stuff in that onboarding. Anything that you train them on has to be repeated, and it has to be repeated several times. So like a month later, then 3 months later, then 6 months later. But we don't do it. We onboard them and that's it. They should know how to use the tool. We taught them how to use the tool when we onboarded them. Yeah, but they're not using the tool. So think about your onboarding and then the ongoing training that repeats the onboarding so that they really learn what you need them to learn and they can use it proficiently, whether it's the skills training, the tools, or any other organizational things they need, right? It should be proficiency, not just, well, we taught them. They should be able to do it. No, it's your job to make sure they are proficient in it, right? So this onboarding needs to go on, and then this ongoing training has to be planned. Now, there's one humongous thing that is missing from almost every onboarding I've seen in the last 20 plus years. And that is understanding the buyers. So we teach them, our company, our products, our industry, even. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but we give them all of that, right? But they need to understand a day in the life of the person or people they'll be calling on. And this is just completely left out. I have not seen a training program that includes this. Now, if one's out there, somebody please let me know, but I don't see it. So if I am a fairly new salesperson, somewhere between 25 and 30 years old. I've had a couple of jobs. In this particular job, I'm going to be calling on director and VP level. Okay. I've never been a director. I've never been a VP. I have no idea how someone even got to be a director or a VP. Probably might not have even thought that far ahead in my career about whether I would ever be a director or a VP. I don't know what knowledge these people have, like I said, how they got where they are, what they're concerned about, what their job is in their company. I don't know any of that, but I'm calling them and asking them to buy something from me. Now, you're putting your salespeople in a terrible position when you do this. Now, they don't know it, so they just keep going, right? And some of them figure it out along the way. And of course, seasoned salespeople have been around a long time, have figured it out for sure. But it's very hard to sell to someone that you don't understand. Because what are we doing when we're selling? We're helping, we're trying to help people solve. Well, most of the time we don't understand their problem well enough, but we also don't understand who they are, what they care about, and how they make a decision. So we simply have to provide this training to our salespeople. I mean, you can tell, like, I'm really passionate about this. It really bugs me that we let salespeople call people they have just no idea about, right? Now, how would you go about doing this, right? Well, as a CEO, first of all, you have people in your company in these roles. You have director level people and VP level people. All right, if you're a startup, maybe not so much, but maybe your advisory council does. Or maybe you have a few clients who have people in these roles that you can get to be on a panel or interview them. Or, my goodness, you could even use AI today to get this information, honestly. But you've got to be able to say to these salespeople, here is a typical director. This is what a director does. Oh, and by the way, here's the difference between a director and a VP. Right? A VP has more responsibilities, they're more strategic, and they're doing these kinds of things, whereas a director's doing this, and this is a typical um, reporting route, these kinds of things, right? So they're understanding. Then, all right, how does a person get to be a director? What do they have to do in their career to get there, right? What do they have to do to be a VP? In this particular industry, in this particular company, and this role, what is that, right? So you can have them interview people with those titles and ask them questions about what was your career path? How did you get there? What do you do in your job every day? Like, literally, what do you do all day, right? What kinds of things concern you? What are you worried about? What does your boss expect from you, right? How do you make decisions? So getting them to have a pretty thorough understanding, because they've never been in that position. And most salespeople have never been in a position to make a decision to purchase something that is similar to what they are selling, right? Or even purchase anything of that magnitude for their company. So understanding how humans buy and how they purchase things, right, is really important, but we don't teach them that either. So if you think through this and think, okay, who are they going to have to talk to? What are those people's roles, their titles? How did they get there? What do they think about? How do they make decisions? Right? So help the salespeople learn this about the people they're going to be calling. And then, right before they're calling those specific humans, they can do some research on LinkedIn and on the website and using AI to learn more about that specific person. But at least they'll have this general idea of how someone got to be in that position and what kinds of things they think about, what their job requires, right? And they'll be in a better position. So this day in the life of the person I'm going to be calling kind of training is so, so necessary. And yet, again, completely left out. And maybe some salespeople figure it out on their own, and maybe some don't. But if you want them to be highly successful, then they need this type of training. And it takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And they're probably going to be already on the phone calling some people or meeting some people prior to having all of this. But try to get it in there during the onboarding, and then do some repetition of it over time, and then ask them, to think about it, right? And to do some research on their own, and to learn more about this type of person that they're going to be calling on, that's going to be buying from them. All right. So you can tell I really care about this day in the life training, and it's a big deal. Let me just take a peek at my notes here to see what else. All right. Then the next thing is the ongoing training, which we've talked a little bit about. There's repetition, what you've already learned, repeating it. And then there's new things that need to be added. So we continue to grow and develop as salespeople, right? So you've got to have that ongoing training set up and thought through. Now, I read a really distressing post on LinkedIn today that said we're spending less on training and development of salespeople than ever before. Why? Why are we doing that? I mean, I know, look, the economy is a little crazy right now. Things are up in the air, but you have to invest in these valuable assets. You've hired these salespeople to go out and get you more business, to grow your company. You've got to invest in training them. So, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine why anybody would be spending less on helping their salespeople be successful, right? But this ongoing training needs to be set up in advance and thought through. It's like, what needs to be repeated and what new things do we need to continue training on? So think about that and get that figured out. If you don't have someone in house who can do that, it's something you can outsource, but it has to be done. And then there's coaching. Now, I did a whole podcast on coaching just previous to this. So go back there. I'll put it in the show notes and listen to that. We are not coaching our salespeople. It is so distressing to me. Why? Well, we've got sales leaders busy doing everything else but coaching their salespeople, right? So, how can you set them up for success if you're not coaching them? It's not just like wind them up and let them go. That's not how it works. They need feedback to improve. Think of it like athletics. How do athletes get better at anything? They practice and practice and practice, but just not on their own. They have a coach, someone to give them feedback and to give them ideas and things to try and make changes and adjustments. We need that in sales too. Sales is a high performance game, right? We need high performers to grow our company. We have to treat them like high performers. So we have to provide that ongoing coaching. And again, if you haven't listened to the other podcast about coaching, the sales leaders need to coach them on their deals, right? So they've got these big deals that are either stuck or really prestigious or high dollars, and they need coaching on how to be better positioned for those deals and how to get resources they need to move those forward and get them to close. They need coaching on their pipeline. Is it full enough? Is it bloated? Is it, are the wrong kind of deals in there? Are they actually real opportunities, or are they just, I'm still prospecting them, but I made them an opportunity already. Like, real coaching, dig deep on those pipelines and help get them adjusted properly. Again, setting the salesperson up for success, right? So you got to do that deal coaching, you got to do that pipeline coaching, and then you have to do conversation coaching. And that is where you listen to their conversations, either in person or, recordings or, on a Zoom call, however it is that you're listening or someone's listening, and being able to tell them what they did well and what they can do better, right? So this kind of coaching has to happen so the salespeople continually develop and so that deals are not constantly stuck. We're opening opportunities, putting them in the funnel, and then they sit there. No, it has to be being actively pursued. There has to be activity. It has to be moving. It cannot just sit there. Not okay. So if you're not having your leaders coach, then if they can't, for whatever reason, they don't know how, they don't have time, either free up their time and teach them how to coach or hire a coach to coach your salespeople, because it is imperative. We're trying to get your company to grow at the pace that you want it to grow at. And we can't do that if the salespeople can't hit their numbers, right? So, again, assuming you've set reasonable goals that can be attained based on the research that you've done in the market, the salespeople should be able to attain them. And when they're not, there's something wrong. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what's wrong. These things have to be fixed. So we also have to think about the tools, right? So sometimes we have too many tools. Sometimes we don't have enough. But I can tell you this, your salespeople are not proficient using their tools. They're not. They use this much of a tool that has this much. Not okay, right? So if they're using any kind of tool to automate messages, to send out sequences, they're not using them properly. I can tell you that right now. They're also probably not writing very good messaging. So that all has to be fixed. They have to be proficient using the tools. A lot of times the sales managers don't even know how to use them. Okay, get some training, get this fixed. Use the tools you have and make sure everyone can use them proficiently. CRM, oh my gosh, bane of my existence. I wish it would disappear from the planet, right? But think about it. Your CRM is a mess. It's got dirty data all over it. Your salespeople aren't entering the right information. They don't enter it on time. You can't pull a forecast. You have to export everything and put it on a spreadsheet and do all this magic to try to figure out, are there any real deals here and are they going to close, right? No, a CRM should be used properly. Set it up properly, teach everybody to use it, get the information in, clean up the mess that's in there, and hold everyone accountable, right? It's not okay that salespeople are not putting their notes into your CRM. So make sure that's happening and make it easy. There's so many tools now that you can attach to your CRM to make it super easy for salespeople to get the information in there. And with AI now, there's just no reason, right? Get it cleaned up, get the right information in there, and make sure that every tool that you give them, they can be proficient with, because otherwise they're wasting time, they're wasting your money, and they're just not as productive as they should be. So really make sure you take the time. Now you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many things we have to train people on. It takes time. They're out of the field. Right. But then when they're back out there with the customers, they can do a better job. So we've got to pause and fix some of this stuff. All right. Now, on top of all of this, that we're probably not choosing the right type of people to hire, and we're definitely not onboarding them well enough. Our ongoing training is probably not, good enough either. And people aren't using their tools professionally. All these things I've been talking about. But now we have a buyer whose behavior has changed radically due to all the information that's available out there in the world, on the internet, using AI, and just, word of mouth, all of that. They have a lot of information. So with this buyer being different, the way we prepare people to sell to them has to be different. That's why the day in the life training is so important. But more than that, you have to teach your salespeople to meet the buyer where they are, or the buyers. In the case of a very complex sale, you have, 5 or more people involved in making the decision. So how do we do that? Well, they have no idea where these buyers are, right? So you have to bring them training and knowledge about this. So 2 people that I highly recommend that you follow are Tim Reister and Brent Adamson, and have your salespeople read all of their stuff and follow them and interact with them on LinkedIn, because they are doing buyer side research that is current, and they're explaining how the buyer has changed. Now, when we start to think about what a salesperson has to do to meet someone where they are, well, first of all, they have to know, what has a buyer done prior to talking to the salesperson, right? Well, if you listen to Tim Reister, from Corporate Visions, by the way, what you hear is, all right, these buyers are coming with preconceived notions about things. They're pre-convinced that they know what they need. Now, back in the day, right, it wasn't like that. The people buying needed more information. They needed to talk to the salesperson. They needed to learn a lot. Now, not so. Now, the danger in this, right, there's so much information out there, is misinformation. So they come pre-convinced, and some of that pre-convincing could be misinformation. But so a salesperson has to know, like, what did a person probably do before they got to me? They probably went on AI. So what does AI say about your company or about the solutions to this type of problem? The competitors, that's an obvious one. I mean, you train your sales team on competitors, of course, right? But what did they probably do? All right, did they Google? And then did they ask their friends? And then did they use AI? And then what else and what else? And how did they collect the information? So we have 2 problems in this. One If I'm a person who's tasked at a company to go buy something that solves for X, I have to understand what X is. And if it's just me right now, I can only see this problem, this X, from my perspective, not from everyone else's who's involved. So I, the buyer, don't thoroughly understand my own problem. And if I don't thoroughly understand the problem, how could I possibly know what the right solutions would be? All right, so that's part of it. Secondly, now I'm collecting all of this information, thinking I know what the problem is. And so I find some solutions. Maybe I've ruled out doing it in-house. And so I go out and look at what are the obvious solutions for this. And I look and see who all the competitors are, and I start to research. Well, most of our websites are woefully inadequate. So if this person depended on the website to learn what you do, they probably didn't get it right. Even AI, it can only scoop what's already out there. So if it's scooping from any place where you've posted anything, your website, your social media, etc., it can only scoop what's there and feed that back. So there might be misinformation there or lack of information. So now you've got a buyer or maybe a couple of buyers who come to talk to a salesperson with whatever information they've collected. And here they are with being, misconceptions and being pre-convinced that they need to buy this thing to solve their problem. So how do you train a salesperson around that? You're probably not. So what do? They go in and just ask the same old questions and do a typical discovery call, and it doesn't work. So there has got to be retraining around this. There's got to be a different line of thinking. They've got to stop selling and start helping. So you are here where you are. Let's talk about how you got here and what this problem looks like to you and why you've chosen these potential solutions. Tell me about it, right? And if a salesperson is really good, they can dig into the problem before they go back forward to the solution. So I'm hearing you tell me this about the problem, right? And digging into that and asking more deeper level questions and getting more information out of that. Okay, great. Now what, right? Now maybe they figure out, oh my gosh, this is not the right solution for you. This whole category of solutions is not right for you. It's their responsibility then to tell them that. But no, because they're told to sell X, they're going to sell X. They're not told, hey, figure out, help, solve. If our solution isn't right, tell them, be the first one to let them know. In fact, not only our solution, this whole category of solutions you've chosen is probably not right. So here's what else to do, right? But we don't do that, but we need to, right? All right, so we have that going on. So these buyers now are coming to the table in this different way than they have before, and our sellers are ill-equipped to deal with it. They just fall back to the old BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing, or a MEDIC approach, or any of these other approaches where they're just asking questions that the buyer has no time for and doesn't want to answer. So it's annoying. All right. On top of that, let's say they were able to meet the buyer where they are, and they did start to really understand the problem, and they did see a fit in the solution, and yet the deal still isn't moving forward. Well, let's look at Brent Adamson's research. So Brent Adamson is saying, look, we're selling value, and that's not the problem. The customer, the prospect might see the value. What they don't understand is how to make a decision and spend their company's money wisely. So they're hesitant, right? They lack the confidence they need to make a decision. Oh my gosh, are we teaching our sellers how to help people make a decision, how to help buying groups come to consensus and make a good decision about spending their company's money? No, we don't teach that. Sellers don't know that. I mean, some of them have learned it on their own, but most of them don't know it. So now we've done everything else right, let's say, and there's still no decision. And that is because of this lack of confidence that Brent is talking about. And his new book coming out called The Frame Making Sale explains all of this. So important to note that even if you're sellers get in a conversation with the buyers, there are all these other problems working with buyers that we haven't trained sellers to manage. We don't train them on consensus building and decision making, for example. Why not? That's what a seller has to do. They have to bring a buying group to consensus, right? And help them make a decision. They have to guide them to that. And I'll say it again. So stop selling and start helping. That's what your company has to focus on and move your sales team to. All right, I feel like I've been ranting a lot and hopefully you haven't shut it off. But anyway, this is really important to me because I see especially young people failing miserably at sales when sales is the greatest profession on earth and they should be succeeding and we should set them up to do so, right? So it's time to rethink what we're doing in sales, right? This whole thing, we got to rethink it from start to finish. Just pause it, just push the pause button, spend time rethinking it, and then reshape it so that we can provide a frictionless and even a fun and good buying process for our buyers, right? Help them get what they need. And if we do that, right, then our sales are going to be where they need to be. Our company will continue to grow. And so we just have to think about how we're going to do this. It's not going to happen all at once, but we've got to start, right? All salespeople should be able to meet their quota if you have set, your sights on a number that's real based on the research, based on the marketplace. And then if you have set them up for success in their territories or their verticals or with their named accounts, whatever it is, if you set them up for success and done all of these things that I'm talking about with onboarding and training and tools, right? Then they should be able to meet their quota. So if they're not, there is something wrong. And it's your job as the leader to work with your leaders to figure it out and fix it. Yes, some of them probably are not going to make it at your company. They're just not the right fit. But most of them probably will if you can do all of these things that I'm talking about. We need to set salespeople up for success. So as CEOs, we can stay focused on the bigger picture and the strategy and grow our companies to where we know they can be. In any economy, we can thrive if we can stay focused on the marketplace and the customer and what they need, and then make sure that our sales team, our customer-facing teams can do that. All right, rant over. I hope you got something out of this. If you need help with any of this, I'm a phone call away, or you can DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.